What is up YouTube? I'm Royal, I'm rank 1 Wild Rift, and welcome to my patch 6.3c tier list. So we've had quite a few changes on the items and the runes, however they are pretty minimal and I don't really see them affecting the meta that much. I do expect a lot of these champions that were already strong and were taking first strike to maybe take it a little more Dark Harvest and Electrocute, for example. However, I don't think that the meta will be redefined by these changes. However, we've also had some pretty impactful buffs and nerfs. So if you are looking for your new main, let's jump straight into the tier list and see if we can find it. If you guys are actually watching this tier list instead of just skipping to the 5 different roles to figure out where I've rated your favorite champion, then I would appreciate if you could leave a like. And comment down below that you actually watch these tier lists. So, starting off the Baron lane, we don't really have a change in the God tier champions. Honestly, Fiora probably deserves her own tier, aside from Camille and Aatrox, because she's just better than the other God tier champions. However, the Aatrox and Camille are still better than most of the S tier champions, so they do deserve recognition. One new addition that we have in the S tier is Malphite. Malphite received some very meaningful buffs, especially in his good matchups. So Malphite is more of a counterpick champion. And I usually don't just put straight up counterpicks champions in the S tier. Because, for example, if the enemy, let's say, picks Volibear, right, who's in A tier, he's gonna stomp you if you're playing Malphite, right? But Malphite is actually one of the best answers to a lot of different bruiser-type champions, especially the ones that are focusing on physical damage, and he can be a great answer to them, especially with his tank build. Obviously, we're not talking about AP Malphite here, we're talking about tank Malphite. So, versus a lot of matchups in a lot of these really strong bruiser champions, and a lot of these attack speed reliant champions like the Jax or the Yone or even a champion like Jace that you might see in the Baron lane, and you don't know how to deal with, Malphite is going to be a great answer into those picks. In the A tier, we also have Urgot, who I didn't actually put him into S tier. I didn't change his tier because I don't think that buff is meaningful enough. I think he's still going to be mostly doing the same thing, but with a slightly better early game. Moving on to jungle, we do have a new pick in the God tier, and that is Zed. Zed was already one of the strongest S tier champions, and after the buffs that he received, which are some pretty massive buffs, it's gonna really help his early game skirmishing, which was one of the main weaknesses he had, right? His first clear was pretty weak, and even though his first clear is not really impacted, his first few skirmishes are gonna be a lot stronger, and that's the only thing that was kind of keeping Zed from being a God tier jungler, because his late game and team fighting and assassinations and snowball is out of this world. So now that he actually has a decent early game with these armor and magic resistant buffs, I do expect him to be one of the best junglers going forward. He's one of the hardest junglers to play. Definitely lock in and watch my second channel, Zed Gameplays. That's gonna help you guys a lot with learning how to play the champion. So definitely check out my second channel if you want to see more gameplay content. Nidalee continues to be insanely broken. Again, one of the hardest junglers to play. It seems like some people are starting to master her. I'm seeing a few good Nidalees here and there, but she's still a very underutilized champion. And of course, Viego and Lee Sin, no change to them. They will continue to be really, really good. I do want to see how the first strike changes impact the jungle role a little more, since most meta junglers would go first strike. Obviously not Viego, who will continue to go Conqueror, but Lee Sin and Zed and Nidalee do have other rune options as well that are also really good. I also want to highlight Gwen as a possible jungle pick. She has received multiple jungle buffs, and while her early game continues to be pretty weak, and she's also not a great ganker, if she's just able to scale in the jungle safely, she's an absolute monster in the late game. In the mid lane, we don't really have any massive changes here as well. We do have 2 champions, I guess 3 champions that I want to highlight. The meta has become pretty much similar to 6.3. We haven't seen some huge changes. I don't think these rune changes are really going to impact mid lane that much either. I do wonder if more champions start picking up Electrocute to have a stronger early game as opposed to first strike. The main changes that we do have is Zed and Aurelion Sol did receive buffs. The Zed buffs are mostly targeted towards mid lane, and it's going to help him a lot on these tougher matchups that Zed used to struggle with in the early game. so he's going to be one of the strongest mid laners going forward. I do think he's slightly better in the jungle, but he's great in both roles right now, so great time to pick up Zed. The early lane soul buffs are also decent. I think they put him in line with the other mages that he's been weaker than in the last few patches, like the Morgana, the Annie, Orianna, Veigar, Syndra, Ryze, all of these like really powerful late game mages, especially like the Ryze and the Syndra. I think these changes will allow him to stack more often, and obviously stacking with Aurelion Sol is not only useful because it buffs all of your abilities, but you get your empowered ultimate more often, which is just such an unbelievable spell, and it's what makes Aurelion Sol the absolute teamfight monster that he is. So I think he does belong in the S spot. And now something that's maybe a little controversial, but I've decided to put Zoe in B tier. I think the Zoe nerfs were definitely overkill. They nerfed the one thing that Zoe really had going for her, which was being able to just deal so much damage without even really hitting any skill shots. So now Zoe doesn't really have that anymore, and even her skill shot damage is not that high, right? Getting that one shot with her first ability is pretty inconsistent, and she's very easily countered by tankier champions. So I can't really justify putting Zoe in S or A tier. I do think she needs some compensation buffs. I would like to see her first ability become a little stronger to match her League PC version. Moving on to the ADC tier list, we have made a couple changes. We have pushed Ashe and Lucian into God tier. I feel like these champions were already probably stronger than I thought they were. And now with more experience on the patch, I do think they deserve to be there. I do want to see how Lethal Tempo shakes up the meta a little more. I feel like the Lethal Tempo nerfs have been a kind of an indirect nerf to a few champions, like the Vayne, like the Caitlyn, like the Tristana, the Jinx, champions that did really rely on Lethal Tempo. Obviously, champions like Lucia and Ezreal don't really care. Ashe, it kind of hurts her DPS, but you're not really picking Ashe for insane damage. In the first place, you're picking her up for her ulti, right? Her utility, her slows, and so on. I do want to see how that shakes up the meta, but I'm feeling pretty confident in this tier list that I've definitely taken into account the Lethal Tempo changes. So I do want to see how that plays out, but I'm feeling pretty confident this tier list is good. Finally, looking at the supports, we haven't had any major changes. The one change I want to talk about is Senna in the God tier. I was hesitant to put her in God tier because I feel like she's one of the most underutilized and wrongly played champions in the game. The problem with Senna is that she's a marksman, right? She's an ADC, so a lot of people just play her in really bad Senna team comps where you already have 2, maybe 3 marksmen sometimes, multiple crit champions, and you run into like Randuins. But I feel like people are starting to understand when to play Senna and when not to play Senna a little more, picking her in the right situations and playing her correctly because she's such a unique, different champion. So I feel confident putting her into God tier with the other God tier champions like Millia, who's the best enchanter support, Braum and Zilean, who are 2 incredible disengage supports, especially in a meta that really revolves around having solid engage. And of course, Nautilus, who is that solid engage, right? He's the best engager in the game. If you guys want to see some crazy good Nautilus gameplay, again, check out my second channel. I have been cooking with this champion in the European server, and I have the best of the best Royal gameplays uploaded in that channel. So thank you so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this tier list, make sure to leave a like. Comment down below what champions you're using to climb this season. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Let's help each other out. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more Wild Rift content.